What's up, gamers? DreamcastGuy here, coming at you today with another episode of Does It Suck? The show where we take a deep dive look at a new game and see what's good or bad about it. This time we're going to be diving into the release of Red Dead Redemption 2 Online, because obviously this is by far the most hyped up multiplayers of the entire year. At this point, we all know that Red Dead itself is a total masterpiece, but a big appeal of it is the fact that it had so many millions of lines of dialogue and thousands of different characters that you can help, hurt, or flat out murder. So are they able to take this giant scope of cool storytelling and transfer it into a multiplayer setting that isn't going to feel strange or out of place? Well, shockingly, the answer to that question is yes. They somehow managed to make it where this has a real story, real modes, and some real easy ways to just pick up and have fun. So let's talk about the plot to begin with, because this is probably the most peculiar part that is really good, but I actually didn't expect it. So at the beginning, you get to make your own custom character. You get to choose what you like to wear, what kind of face you want to have, or even your facial hair. After that, you're thrown into prison, but for a crime you didn't commit. Once you're in there, you're stuck just doing really crappy community service and stuff like that, but one day they decide that they're going to transfer you in a wagon so that you can be hung. During the trip, the wagon gets robbed and somebody busts you out of jail. This person didn't do this out of the good of their heart though, they want a favor in return, and that's where you meet the main character, or the main story character I would call it. She's the person who's hired our custom heroes to help her out in her quest for revenge. So here's the thing, you can do all these missions in a row if you'd like to, and really kind of have an entire story experience in the multiplayer with your own little dude, but the real appeal to me was trying to get into some online matches, have some trouble, kill somebody in town, maybe get drunk, run from the cops. So that's what I was trying to aim on first, is am I able to replicate the fun of the single player's really charming, quirky moments in this multiplayer setting? And honestly, you can. This is by far my favorite part about it, is just meeting other people in the Outback and making up our own little stories. Like one of the first towns I ever got to, Blackwater, I just started wandering around, got drunk, I was just kind of just being a hooligan, when suddenly this dude got really pissed and started screaming at me into his mic. So I decided to stumble after him, yank him off his horse, and start trying to beat him up. I actually beat this dude to death as I heard him yelling at me, and then I had to run from the cops before they could catch me. It was so cool because it was a really organic random moment of getting in a real fight with this dude and punching his lights out. Now, let's talk a little bit about the other types of multiplayer, because obviously you can just wander around in the town with your friends or random people online, but a big part of this game is trying to make sure that things like team deathmatch and the races all feel good. Let's dig into the versus multiplayer first, because I think that this is probably where everybody's going to be spending their time. So you get to choose whether you want to have small group multiplayer or big group multiplayer, and both of them are very fun, because there is actually loads of different deathmatch modes. It's not just you trying to shoot all the other players. A lot of times it's actually really weird stuff. Like in this game, you are only giving throwing knives, but the knives do 1,000,000 damage, so they'll kill anybody they touch. And everybody has a single life. And because of it, it basically makes this a really intense version of hide and seek, where people are creeping around in little dilapidated houses and trying to make sure they see their enemy before their enemy sees you. That is so cool, and it's really kind of neat to be able to yell at people. There's actually proximity chat, so when I was near somebody and I could actually hear them being panicked and breathing, I could sneak up behind them and try and stab them. This goes for the other styles of multiplayer as well, like zone capture or the big styles of team deathmatch. Now, this does operate in close to the way that GTA 5 Online worked, which is that in most matches, you can't really take in tons of guns. You really just have the one or two that you've already had equipped, but if you want to get the really great super weapons, you need to find them randomly on the map. So you'll see that right here I picked up a shotgun and blasted a guy off his horse. I can also find things like a sniper rifle or this bow and arrow, but no matter what you find, it's a matter of trying to utilize its abilities as best you can. Here is by far my favorite thing about this game's multiplayer, is that everything is really really fun because it's so out there. It's so exuberant and bizarre. As an example, one of the match types you can try out is basically about where you're given a ton of weapons right at the beginning, but the tougher it is to use, the more points you get. So if you kill somebody with a throwing axe, you'll get 10 points, but if you use a shotgun, you can get 3 points, or just a long-range rifle, you'll get 1 point. This is really cool because it makes you end up switching between your entire catalog of weapons to try and get the right shot for every situation before you get taken out. Participating in all these fights is really strangely thrilling because it's not always about the controls so much as it is the little stories you end up making purely by accident. Like a time when I saw all these people in this city and I tried to sneak in the back of this house to ambush this dude, and we ended up getting into a really bloody fist fight that he won. And despite the fact that I ended up meeting my end, it was such a cool little freaking shock that I ended up laughing out loud at how good his kill was. So something else about this that I bet you're curious about is progression, because throughout this video you see me using a ton of different guns in a bunch of different situations. Well, the upgrade system is probably the one thing I'm not super in love with, because this is where the microtransactions come in. So when you go into this, you're earning tons and tons of cash and experience points. Experience points unlock the ability to use stronger and better weapons, like hitting level 6 gives you the access to a long-range sniper rifle that you can use in a matchmake or just while wandering around the world. That in and of itself is totally okay with me because obviously leveling up is a really fun experience and it keeps you coming back to keep putting in more hours. My issues begin to arise when you go to the local store because it's here that you begin to see the fact that money is meant to be spent. So here I am, just a random shop, and I'm trying to get some cool outfits, but you'll see on the paper that these things require you to be a certain level and have a certain amount of currency, like 50 bucks. Now here's the thing, some of the items only have gold bars. You can only spend gold on particular items, which you guessed it, are what you're going to spend real cash on. And what's kind of disappointing is it doesn't look like the stuff is necessarily overpowered in any way, but it's very disappointing to me that it looks like some stuff you're basically going to have to spend cash on if you want it. Now I do want to say there is a way to earn gold, but it's very slow. Anytime you want, you're able to open up the matchmaking tab, and within it you have 3 separate options, which is deathmatch, which we've already talked about, races, which we're going to get to in a second, and story missions. Story missions are by far the best part in my opinion because it gives you a real chance to have a more tense style of gameplay. In these, you're usually having to take out a big group of people or stalk an evil camp of bandits, and during this, your entire team can only die twice, which means that you need to be incredibly careful, since if 3 people die, it will restart the mission back to the last checkpoint. And I like this though because it's very thrilling to try and sneak through the jungle and stab somebody with a knife, and talking to your teammates to basically coordinate that next big attack. And when you complete it, the better you do, you'll get bigger rewards like extra gold, which I mentioned, or cash. But here's the problem, you don't get a full gold bar. Even if you do exceptionally well, you get a 1/10 of 1 gold, which means that if you're somebody who's wanting to get something that's like a 50 gold coat that you think looks really neat, you would need to do 500 matches. Now, I kind of get it and I kind of don't. They're trying to motivate you to keep playing the game, and as you get further into this and go to deeper story missions, I bet they'll probably provide bigger rewards. There's a lot of choices in this multiplayer beta that are very peculiar because they function in a way that I didn't expect, and gold is definitely part of that. I knew that there'd be some sort of microtransactions, but I just didn't want it to be locking out particular gear. But the last thing I really want to focus on is the racing, and this will be short. Basically, it's now possible to just jump on a horse and queue up for a racing league. Now, don't go into this expecting it to be your typical car race where you're just going around a track over and over again. fun. Instead, they've invented this idea where instead you get dropped into a giant city and there's a bunch of different smoke beacons, and what you have to do is hit them all in any order you want, and eventually that will make it where it spawns the finish line. And during this, you don't have any weapons originally, but by finding them and running them over with your horse, they automatically go in your hands. They have very limited bullets though, so it makes it where as I'm running along, I'm trying to pew all the people around me, and also, of course, focusing on getting to that next objective. It's a nice way to try and handle this stuff to make it where it's not boring, because really everything in this is really good. There's no part of Red Dead Redemption 2 that feels boring or grindy or lame. Every part of this is fantastic, especially when I'm getting to play it with my actual real life friends. Even by myself though, it really is a blast. I love just getting to wander around, get some upgrades, hunt some animals, and eventually maybe find a cool little side quest. This game plays so great online, and I'm very curious what major changes they'll end up making in the future, because I definitely think that it's possible that we'll end up seeing some free expansions down the line, like an Undead Nightmare map. But until then, I'm definitely going to keep playing, keep getting kills, and keep trying to do my best to be the ultimate cowboy. But how about you? Have you gotten a chance to try Red Dead Redemption 2's online? And if you have, what do you think of it? Cowboy multiplayer seems like it's kind of freaking awesome. Thanks so much for watching, gamers. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, share with your friends, and subscribe if you haven't already. But do me the biggest favor of all and keep dreaming. Oh, hey. I was just playing a little bit of Grand Theft Auto on my Darth Vader PSP. Are you curious what I'm going to come out with next? Well, if you click this button, you'll be subscribed to be the first to know. Also, if you click over here and here, you can see my latest review and my latest top 10. I promise, it was super good. Or it was really bad, and I'm sure you can just make fun of me in the comments. Either way, it'll be a lot of fun. Thanks so much for watching.